Every fantasy football player needs a list of sleepers on draft day, and Sports Illustrated just published our big sleeper list for 2020, and it comes from the best players and the best analysts in the world. SI fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano and the editor of Arrowhead Report, Joshua Brisco, are here with me now to discuss some fantasy sleepers. Fabs, I'm going to go to you because a few of our analysts, including you have Daniel Jones. One of our other analysts had Darius Slayton. Let's talk about the Giants playmakers.
Right. Daniel Jones is in a really good spot to succeed last year. 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Pretty good for a rookie quarterback. The fumbles were an issue. He has worked on that in the offseason. And then you look at what the Giants did. They added to the offensive line through the draft, most notably Andrew Thomas. Also, keep in mind, Daniel Jones is a guy who can run with the football. I could see him giving you 350 to 400 yards on the ground, maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's big. Another reason to like Daniel Jones, well, Darius Slayton and some of the pass catchers. Golden Tate, Evan Engram will be back from injury. Of course, you've got Sterling Shepard. Then you've got maybe the best running back in the league in Saquon Barkley, who can take a screen pass 50 yards for a touchdown anytime he touches the football. So that's also big for Jones. And let's also not forget that the Giants defense, it stinks, which means there could be a lot of passing opportunities for Jones in the second half of games, more garbage time points. And in fantasy, we love those garbage time points. So I think Daniel Jones could be a big-time breakout candidate, sleeper type, someone who could finish as a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Josh, let me go over to you because a bunch of our analysts are all over the Chiefs playmakers, rightfully so, one of the best offenses in the league. But someone that is slipping to the double-digit rounds is second-year wide receiver Mecole Hardman. Where does he fit in on the depth chart, and what do you expect to see from him in 2020?
I am so genuinely excited to see Mecole Hardman this year for a bunch of reasons. One, he averaged almost 21 yards per reception last year. He had 26 receptions, so depending on where that line gets cut off, you might not see him at the top of any stat sheets because of that. But among receivers with even double-digit receptions, Hardman was best in yards per reception. You are going to have to see him get behind Tyreek Hill, certainly Travis Kelce, not as a receiver, but as a pass catcher, obviously. Sammy Watkins came back this year, and Demarcus Robinson came back on a one-year deal. So there are going to be a lot of pass catchers for Patrick Mahomes to work with, of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well. But Hardman talked during training camp a couple of times so far and mentioned that he's more comfortable with the intermediate routes, more comfortable in kind of the live defense reads that makes him audible a route that's so common in Andy Reid's offense. It's a complicated, difficult offense. I think the only reason that he wasn't more involved last year is because there was just so much for him to absorb. I love Hardman as a player. I love the idea of getting him in the double-digit rounds in a fantasy draft this year. Totally understanding that there's a chance his usage won't be high enough to ultimately justify, having him in your starting lineup. But as a flyer, I think he's one of the smartest in the sport.
That's what sleepers are all about. You can elevate your fantasy football game by going to si.com/fantasy and signing up for our exclusive membership, SI Fantasy Plus.